Ties of Kinship 1. In a narration found in Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 1979, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that maintaining the ties of kinship leads to an increase in wealth and life. It is a duty on Muslims to maintain the ties of kinship, as severing them is a major sin. The one who severs ties of kinship for worldly reasons will be cut off from the mercy of Allah, the Exalted, according to a narration found in Sahih Muslim, number 6518. In fact, this is such a serious sin that a narration found in Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 1909, warns that a person who severs ties of kinship over worldly reasons will not enter paradise. Maintaining ties of kinship involves fulfilling the rights of one's relatives according to the teachings of Islam, in order to please Allah, the Exalted. They should seek the pleasure of Allah, the Exalted, at all times and not the pleasure of their relatives, as this encourages one to compromise on the teachings of Islam. One must not expect nor demand gratitude from their relatives when fulfilling their rights, as doing so would prove their insincerity. A Muslim must gently and kindly command good and forbid evil, and in cases where a relative fails to repent from their sins, a Muslim should not sever ties with them, even over religious issues. They should instead continue aiding them in beneficial things, as this act of kindness may inspire them to sincerely repent. Whereas, cutting off from them may well push them further away from right guidance. The increase in wealth mentioned in the main narration could mean that Allah, the Exalted, provides them with more financial opportunities, which causes an increase in their lawful wealth. More importantly, it could mean that Allah, the Exalted, blesses a Muslim's wealth with such grace that it fulfills their needs and the needs of their dependents and provides them with peace of mind and body, which in reality is true wealth. The one who severs ties of kinship will lose out on this grace, which will lead them to feeling unsatisfied irrespective of how much wealth they obtain. And it will always seem that their wealth is not enough to cover their needs and the needs of their dependents. The increase in life mentioned in the main narration refers to being granted grace in one's time so that they manage to fulfill all their duties towards Allah, the Exalted, such as the obligatory prayers, and to people, while still finding time to enjoy the lawful pleasures of this world without excessiveness, extravagance or waste. But the one who severs the ties of kinship will lose out on this grace, and so no matter how little responsibilities they have, it will never seem like they have enough time to fulfill them all and enjoy the lawful pleasures of this world with moderation. They will instead spend the day dealing with one issue after the other without any rest or peace of mind. Ties of Kinship 2. In a narration found in Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 2612, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that the one who possesses complete faith is the one who is best in conduct and most kind to their family. Unfortunately, some have adopted the bad habit of treating non-relatives in a kind manner while mistreating their own family. They behave in this manner, as they do not understand the importance of treating one's own family kindly, and as they fail to appreciate their family. A Muslim will never achieve success until they fulfill both aspects of faith. The first is fulfilling their duties towards Allah, the Exalted, by fulfilling His commands, refraining from His prohibitions, and by facing destiny with patience according to the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. This will ensure they use all the blessings they have been granted in ways pleasing to Allah, the Exalted. The second is to fulfill the rights of people, which includes treating them kindly. None have more right to this kind treatment than one's own family. A Muslim must aid their family in all matters which are good, and warn them against bad things and practices in a gentle way, according to the teachings of Islam. They should not blindly support them in bad things simply because they are their relatives, nor should they fail to help them in good matters because of some ill feelings towards them, as this contradicts Islamic teachings. Chapter 5 Al-Ma'idah, verse 2.
And cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression.
The best way to guide others is through a practical example, as this is the tradition of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, and is much more effective than just verbal guidance. One must learn the rights they are owed and the rights they owe others, especially their relatives, to ensure they fulfill them. A Muslim must always remember that Allah, the Exalted, will ask each person whether they fulfilled the rights of others. He will not ask them if people fulfilled their rights. Therefore, one must be concerned about what they will be questioned about, meaning the rights of others, and therefore strive to fulfill them according to the teachings of Islam. Finally, one should generally choose gentleness in all matters, especially when dealing with their family. Even if they commit sins, they should be warned in a gentle manner, and still be aided in matters which are good, as this kindness is more effective in bringing them back to the obedience of Allah, the Exalted, than treating them harshly. Ties of Kinship 3. In a narration found in Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 1952, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that the most virtuous gift a parent can give their child is to teach them good character. This narration reminds Muslims to be more concerned about the faith of their relatives, such as their children, over acquiring and imparting wealth and properties to them. It is important to understand, worldly legacies come and go. How many rich and powerful people have built massive empires, only for them to be torn apart and forgotten shortly after their death? The few signs left behind from some of these legacies only endure in order to warn people not to follow in their footsteps. An example is the great empire of Pharaoh. Unfortunately, many Muslims are so concerned about teaching their children how to build an empire and acquire much wealth and properties, that they neglect teaching them the sincere obedience of Allah, the Exalted, which involves fulfilling His commands, refraining from His prohibitions, and facing destiny with patience according to the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. This includes good manners towards Allah, the Exalted, and the creation. A Muslim should not be fooled into believing they have plenty of time for teaching their children good manners, as their moment of death is unknown and often pounces on people unexpectedly. In addition, it is extremely difficult to teach good manners to children when they get older and become set in their ways. If one fails to teach their child good manners, then they will only become a source of stress for them in both worlds. The best way a parent can teach their child good manners is by leading by example. They must learn and act on the teachings of Islam and become a practical role model for their child to follow. Today is the day a Muslim should truly reflect on the gift they wish to impart to their children and relatives. This is how a Muslim sends forward good to the hereafter, but also leaves good behind, as a righteous child which supplicates for their deceased parent benefits them. This has been confirmed in a narration found in Jami' at-Tirmidhi, number 1376. It is hoped that the one who is surrounded by good in this way will be forgiven by Allah, the Exalted. Ties of Kinship 4. I had a thought which I wanted to share. I was pondering over a mentality which many people, especially Asians, possess. It is the extreme need in forcing people such as relatives to remain physically together. Even though it is not an evil intention yet, in this day and age it often leads to more trouble than good. As people are not perfect, they will make mistakes which upset others such as their relatives. But if this person only met and conversed with their relatives once in a while, there is a much greater chance the mistake will be overlooked by others, so that it does not become a point of argument. But if this same person was constantly around their relatives, it would be much more likely their attitude and behavior would lead to arguments and friction amongst their relatives. In other words, a person is less likely to argue and more likely to be tolerant with someone they only see once in a while than someone they are always around. This is a fact which everyone will understand if they ponder over it. Unfortunately, some people do not understand that it is better to be physically separated, but be at peace with one another, than be together in conflict and friction. Arguments only lead to mental separation, which often has more of a negative effect on families than physical separation. Whereas, being physically separated does not lead to a mental separation. In fact, it often leads to greater mutual respect and appreciation. As the famous saying goes, separation makes the heart grow fonder. It is important to note that it is the duty of a Muslim to uphold their ties of kinship, irrespective of if they are physically with their relatives or not. But this discussion means that Muslims should not believe a bit of physical separation between people is a bad thing. It in fact can be a cause for the bonds between them to strengthen. Ties of Kinship 5. I had a thought which I wanted to share. I was pondering over a problem which affects most Muslim families. With the passing of time, they become divided and lose the strong connection they once had with one another. There are many causes of this, but a major cause is the foundation on which their connection was formed by their parents and relatives. It is commonly known that when the foundation of a building is weak, the building will either get damaged over time or even collapse. Similarly, when the foundation of bonds connecting people are not correct, the bonds between them will eventually weaken or even break. When the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, brought the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, together he formed the bonds between them for the sake of Allah, the Exalted. Whereas, most Muslims today bring people together for the sake of tribalism, brotherhood, and to show off to other families. Even though the majority of the companions, may Allah be pleased with them, were not related, but as the foundation of the bonds connecting them was correct, namely, for the sake of Allah, the Exalted, their bonds grew from strength to strength. Whereas, many Muslims nowadays are related by blood yet, with the passing of time, become separated, as the foundation of their bonds was based on falsehood, namely, tribalism and similar things. Muslims must understand that if desire for their bonds to endure, and to earn reward for fulfilling the important duty of upholding the ties of kinship and the rights of non-relatives, then they must only forge bonds for the sake of Allah, the Exalted. The foundation of this is that people only connect with one another and act together in a way which is pleasing to Allah, the Exalted. This has been commanded in the Holy Quran. Chapter 5 Al-Ma'idah, verse 2.
And cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression.
Ties of Kinship 6. I saw a news documentary a while ago, which I wanted to briefly discuss. It reported on the rise of drug trafficking and gangs, especially amongst the Muslim youth. In most cases, the first people that need to take responsibility and prevent this occurring are parents. Unfortunately, many parents point fingers and claim that school teachers, the police or the imams of mosques must keep the youth away from gangs and dealing drugs. Even though they all have a duty, but the primary and biggest duty lies with the parents. Parents must educate their children continuously on the bad effects of gangs and illegal drugs. How it ruins the lives of the people involved and those who are connected to them, such as their families. It is just like the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised in a narration found in Sahih Bukhari, number 2101. A bad friend is like a bad smell which infects their friends as well as others. The key to keeping the youth away from gangs is education from parents primarily and then from others, such as siblings and teachers. Parents must question the whereabouts of their children in a gentle way. They must inquire about who they are going out with, where they are going, and about their activities. They should even meet their children's friends to ensure they are suitable for companionship. If their children are in possession of expensive things which the parents did not purchase for them, they must question this. If children are questioned like this from a young age, they will get familiar with it, and not become upset when they are questioned later on in their lives. This is the duty of parents, as indicated by the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in a narration found in Sunan Abu Dawood, number 2928. Unfortunately, some parents believe their duty is only to earn wealth for their children. So they busy themselves with this, and neglect the more important duty of rightly guiding and keeping an active eye on their children. Yes, earning wealth is important, but it cannot take priority over educating one's children on the difference between right and wrong. This news documentary also discussed how some drug dealers fabricate or misinterpret the verses of the Holy Quran and the narrations of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, in order to justify what they do. This is absurd, as Islam clearly prohibits anything which causes harm to oneself and others, such as dealing or taking illegal drugs. They even claim that selling illegal drugs to non-Muslims is acceptable. But this completely challenges the teachings of Islam, as a Muslim must treat everyone with kindness and respect, irrespective of their faith. In fact, one cannot be a true Muslim or a believer until they keep their verbal and physical harm away from a person and their possessions. This is confirmed in a narration found in Sunan and Nasai, number 4998. If a Muslim does not have permission to disrespect the gods of other religions, how can Islam encourage Muslims to mistreat people from other faiths? Chapter 6 Al-An'am, verse 108.
And do not insult those they invoke other than Allah, lest they insult Allah in enmity without knowledge.
Behaving in this manner was in fact something the previous nations did, and Allah, the Exalted, harshly criticized them over it. Chapter 3 Ali Imran, verse 75.
And among the people of the scripture is he who, if you entrust him with a great amount of wealth, he will return it to you. And among them is he who, if you entrust him with a single coin, he will not return it to you unless you are constantly standing over him demanding it. That is because they say, there is no blame upon us concerning the unlearned. And they speak untruth about Allah while they know it.
If the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, stressed the good treatment of animals in many narrations, such as the one found in Sahih Bukhari, number 3318, how can Islam give permission to mistreat humans? Educating one's children will prevent them from being duped into believing and acting on evil statements and advice. This education begins at home. Parents must step up and fulfill this duty. Only then does this duty extend to others, such as school teachers. A parent will be exonerated on the Day of Judgment if they fulfill this duty, irrespective of how their child chooses to behave. But if they fail this duty, they will be held accountable in both this world and the next. Ties of Kinship 7. I read a news article a while ago, which I wanted to briefly discuss. It reported on the stress of family life, such as raising children. Even though there are many things a person can learn and do to reduce this stress, only one important thing will be discussed. Every parent or legal guardian who raises a child will face two elements. The first is their own duty and responsibility towards the child under their care. For example, it is their responsibility to provide them with the necessities of life, such as food, clothing, and housing. In addition, they must arrange for both their worldly and religious education, such as teaching them the good manners discussed in the Holy Quran and the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Chapter 66 at Tarim, verse 6.
O you who have believed, protect yourselves and your families from a fire whose fuel is people and stones.
The second element involves the child's own life choices. For example, whether they want to study hard to achieve success or be lazy. These choices can be between two lawful things, such as the example mentioned, or between right and wrong. For example, a child may have to choose between a life of crime or a lawful occupation. All children must eventually make these choices, and cannot be forced to choose a particular path by someone else, such as their parent. In reality, parents cannot constantly follow their children and somehow force them to make the right choices. It is important for Muslims to understand that they will be questioned and held accountable by Allah, the Exalted, regarding the first element, which is their duty and responsibilities given to them by Allah, the Exalted. But they will not be held accountable for the second element, which are the independent choices their children make. So a Muslim should bear this in mind and concentrate fully on fulfilling their duty, and not stress about the second element which is out of their control. The same way an intelligent person does not stress about the weather, knowing controlling it is out of their hands, they should not stress about the second element, and instead concentrate on what is in their control and what they will be held accountable for. Ties of Kinship 8. In a narration found in Sahih Bukhari, number 5090, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that a person is married for 4 reasons: their wealth, lineage, beauty, or for their piety. He concluded by warning that a person should marry for the sake of piety, otherwise they will be a loser. It is important to understand that the first 3 things mentioned in this narration are very transient and imperfect. They may give someone temporary happiness, but ultimately these things will become a burden for them, as they are linked to the material world, and not to the thing which grants ultimate and permanent success, namely, faith. One only needs to observe the rich and famous in order to understand that wealth does not bring happiness. In fact, the rich are the most unsatisfied and unhappy people on earth. Marrying someone for the sake of their lineage is foolish, as it does not guarantee the person will make a good spouse. In fact, if the marriage does not work out, it destroys the family bond the 2 families possessed before the marriage. Marrying only for the sake of beauty, meaning love, is not wise, as this is a fickle emotion which changes with the passing of time and with one's mood. How many couples, supposedly drowned in love, ended up hating each other? But it is important to note that this narration does not mean one should find a spouse who is poor, as it is important to get married to someone who can financially support a family. Neither does it mean one should not be attracted to their spouse, as this is an important aspect of a healthy marriage. But this narration means that these things should not be the main or ultimate reason someone gets married. The main and ultimate quality a Muslim should look for in a spouse is piety. This is when a Muslim fulfills the commands of Allah, the Exalted, refrains from his prohibitions and faces destiny with patience according to the traditions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him. Put simply, the one who fears Allah, the Exalted, will treat their spouse well in both times of happiness and difficulty. On the other hand, those who are irreligious will mistreat their spouse whenever they are upset. This is one of the main reasons why domestic violence has increased amongst Muslims in recent years. And even when they are pleased with their spouse, they will still fail to fulfill their rights because of their ignorance, which piety helps to remove. Chapter 35 Fatir, verse 28.
Only those fear Allah from among his servants who have knowledge.
Finally, the pious person is always more concerned about fulfilling the rights of others, such as their spouse, than they are concerned about people fulfilling their rights. This is because they understand that Allah, the Exalted, will question them whether or not they fulfilled the rights of people. He will not ask them if people fulfilled their rights, as this will be dealt with when Allah, the Exalted, questions others, not when He questions them. Whereas the impious Muslim will only ever care about their rights that they have taken from society, culture, fashion, and their imagination, and not from Islam. As a result, they will never be truly pleased with their spouse, even if their spouse fulfills their rights according to the teachings of Islam. This is the reason why ignorance of Islam and divorces are so strongly linked. Finally, if a Muslim desires to get married, they should firstly obtain the knowledge associated with it, such as the rights they owe their spouse, the rights they are owed from their spouse, and how to correctly deal with one's spouse in different situations. Unfortunately, ignorance of this leads to many arguments and divorces, as people demand things which their spouse is not obliged to fulfill. Therefore, knowledge, which is the root of piety, is the foundation of a healthy and successful marriage. Ties of Kinship 9. Upholding the ties of kinship is a vital aspect of Islam which cannot be abandoned if one desires success in both worlds. A true sign of one's faith is not spending all day worshipping Allah, the Exalted, in a mosque, but it is to fulfill the rights of Allah, the Exalted, and to fulfill the rights of the creation. One of the most important rights of the creation is to uphold the ties of kinship. One can feign piety by dressing Islamically, but they cannot deceive Allah, the Exalted. When one turns the pages of history, they will always observe that the pious servants of Allah, the Exalted, maintained their ties of kinship. Even when their relatives mistreated them, they still responded with kindness. Chapter 41 Fusilat, verse 34.
And not equal are the good deed and the bad. Repel evil by that deed which is better, and thereupon the one whom between you and him is enmity will become as though he was a devoted friend.
In a narration found in Sahih Muslim, number 6525, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that Allah, the Exalted, will always aid the one who strives to maintain their ties of kinship, even if their relatives make things difficult for them. Replying good with good is not special, whereas replying good to evil is the sign of a sincere believer. The former behavior is even seen in animals. In most cases, when one treats an animal kindly, it will in turn show affection back. It is confirmed in a narration found in Sahih Bukhari, number 5991, that the one who truly upholds the bonds of kinship is the one who maintains ties even when their relatives sever them. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, was constantly terrorized by most of his relatives, but he always showed kindness towards them. It is commonly known that one cannot achieve success without the closeness of Allah, the Exalted. But in a narration found in Sahih Bukhari, number 5987, Allah, the Exalted, has clearly declared that He will sever bonds with the one who cuts their ties of kinship over worldly reasons. Bear in mind, this is true irrespective of how much one struggles to fulfill the rights of Allah, the Exalted, in the form of worship such as the obligatory prayers. If Allah, the Exalted, cuts ties with a Muslim, how can they achieve His closeness and eternal success? In addition, in most cases Allah, the Exalted, delays the punishment of sins in order to give people the opportunity to repent. But breaking the ties of kinship over worldly reasons is punished swiftly. This has been confirmed in a narration found in Sunan Ibn Majah, number 4212. Unfortunately, severing ties is commonly seen in the world today. People easily sever ties of kinship over petty worldly reasons. They fail to recognize that any loss which occurs in the material world is temporary, but if they are disconnected from Allah, the Exalted, they will face prolonged suffering in both worlds. A reason for breaking the ties of kinship, which is commonly seen within the Islamic community, is when one reaches a higher social status through their occupation. This inspires them to discard their relatives, as they believe they are not worthy of interacting with them anymore. Their love for their wealth and social status pushes them to the doors of paranoia, which convinces them that their relatives only wish to take their wealth from them. The Holy Quran indicates that these bonds will be questioned about on the Day of Judgment. Chapter 4 An-Nisa, verse 1.
And fear Allah through whom you ask one another and the wombs. Indeed, Allah is ever over you, an observer.
This verse also clearly indicates that one cannot obtain piety without upholding the ties of kinship. So those who believe they can achieve it through excess worship and fasting are proven wrong and must therefore change their behavior. Islam teaches Muslims to uphold all ties of kinship by aiding their relatives in matters which are good whenever and wherever possible. They have been ordered to adopt a constructive mindset which unites relatives for the benefit of society, rather than a destructive mentality which only causes divisions within families. According to a narration found in Sunan Abu Dawud, number 4919, creating divisions amongst people leads to one's destruction. Those who sever their ties of kinship have been cursed in the Holy Quran. Chapter 47 Muhammad, verses 22 to 23.
So would you perhaps, if you turned away, cause corruption on earth and sever your ties of relationship? Those who do so are the ones that Allah has cursed.
How can one achieve their lawful desires in this world or in the next when they are encompassed with the curse of Allah, the Exalted, and deprived of His mercy? Islam does not order one to go beyond their means in supporting their relatives, nor does it ask them to sacrifice the limits of Allah, the Exalted, for their relatives, as there is no obedience to the creation if it means disobedience to the Creator. This is confirmed in a narration found in Sunan Abu Dawud, number 2625. Therefore, one should never join their relatives in acts of evil. In this case, a Muslim should command their relatives to do good and gently forbid them from evil while maintaining respect for them. Chapter 5 Al-Ma'idah, verse 2.
And cooperate in righteousness and piety, but do not cooperate in sin and aggression.
Countless benefits are obtained by the one who maintains the ties of kinship for the sake of Allah, the Exalted. For example, the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, advised that the one who maintains ties will be blessed with extra grace in their provision and in their life. This is confirmed in a narration found in Sunan Abu Dawud, number 1693. This means that their provision, irrespective of how little it is, will be enough for them, and it will provide them with peace of mind and body. Grace in life means they will find time to fulfill all their religious and worldly duties. These are two blessings Muslims spend their whole life and wealth trying to obtain, but many fail to recognize that Allah, the Exalted, has placed both of them in maintaining ties of kinship. Maintaining ties of kinship is so important that the Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, ordered Muslims to fulfill this vital duty even with their non-Muslim relatives. A narration advising this is found in Sahih Muslim, number 2324. One of the traps of the devil is that he aims to create dissension between relatives and within society, which leads to broken families and social divisions. His ultimate goal is to weaken Islam as a nation. Unfortunately, some have become infamous for harboring grudges which go on for decades and pass on from generation to generation. A person will treat a relative well for decades, but over one mistake and argument, the latter will vow never to speak to them again. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, has warned in a narration found in Sahih Muslim, number 6526, that it is unlawful for a Muslim to cut off ties from another Muslim over a worldly issue for more than 3 days. If this is the command regarding severing ties with a non-relative, can one imagine the seriousness of severing ties with relatives? This question has been answered in Sahih Bukhari, number 5984. The Holy Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, has declared that the one who severs ties with a relative over worldly reasons will not enter paradise. One must reflect on the verses and narrations which discuss this important topic, and realize that if after decades of sins Allah, the Exalted, does not close his doors or severs links with people, why do people so easily turn their backs on their relatives over small worldly issues? This must change if one desires for their connection to Allah, the Exalted, to remain intact. Over 400 free ebooks, audiobooks, infographics, podcasts and blogs available on our website, www.shakepod.com.